Fish aquaculture, change back to that verbiage. We're going to make sure, we did it in policy, we have to do it in regs, we have to make sure we have continuity throughout.
Right, so in number 15, we've definitely got your guidance that you want to keep the word finfish, not strike it.
Right.
And then on, I don't know that we had that same issue in item 14. I think we did keep the word finfish everywhere it was.
Okay.
And let's see. Okay, that's the use table.
So for the table of uses, are you suggesting we should look at the Whatcom County table of uses and propose something similar to that?
In terms of whether it would be allowed in what shoreline designation?
Well, not really. I guess I always see the table as reflecting the language.
Indeed.
And so I think if I understand Watkins correctly, commercial was prohibited in all areas, and the experimental, that language was included in all areas. So I recall it. So it should reflect that.
I just want to make sure that in addition to whatever guidance commissioners you're giving staff in developing the finfish aquaculture provisions, staff, are you needing, or do you have the direction you need for the upland finfish?
Well, I think if we follow the Whatcom example, that's pretty straightforward. If you're seeing something in the Whatcom example that you want us to address differently because of, differentiate between upland and in water, then we may need to do some more talking because, I guess if you want us to just basically just follow what the Whatcom approach is, we can certainly do that. Otherwise, we might need some more specificity from you. Should we start with that?
Yeah, let's start there.
See what okay. Okay. You okay on this one then? Move on.
I'm okay with it so long as we're fully aware that we have continuity on this finfish stays in this regulation throughout.
Okay.
Was there, I think going forward, we just doing what Whatcom County is doing, is that what you wanted to have done? Okay.
I think it is.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Or at least using it as a touchstone
As a
and
model
then
and template.
model and
Right,
then
make it
fitting it
consistent
into
with
our
ours.
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
And if I'm hearing correctly, making the same distinction between salmonid and other finfish or not?
Not sure you're at your question.
I thought I had understood that Whatcom distinguished between finfish that was salmon versus other species.
They specifically don't allow commercial salmon net pen operations, but the rest of their provisions simply use the term finfish net pens.
It's they relate to natural and salmon, but natural salmon.
Yeah, I think it's wild stock or
wild, something like that.
for restoration purposes. They've got that provision, which is actually quite similar to what we've got in the locally approved SMP right now too. And we take the staff taking a closer look at the Whatcom approach and then basically coming back to the board with a proposal for how it would mesh into the rest of what we've got in the locally approved SMP. certainly draw your attention to any glitches we might find.
Yeah, if there's any problems, go ahead and let us know.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe it'd be helpful if I read this here. It's item 23-100-03B 1G. Commercial salmon net pen facilities shall not be located in Whatcom County waters except for limited nonprofit penned cultivation of wild salmon stocks during a limited portion of their life cycle to enhance restoration of native stocks when such activities involve minimal supplemental feeding and use no chemicals or antibiotics.
Yeah.
Pretty narrow.
Right. And the whole thing is going to change after we take a look at the Whatcom approach.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the next
Sure.
topic? Okay. So the next one would be required change number 25. This is regarding the common line buffer provision for non-conforming lots. And staff had recommended an alternative proposal, which would be declining the change from 300 feet to 100 feet. Again, concern about sort of the nexus and proportionality of that 100-foot measurement. And in talking further with Ecology, again, quite similar to the 100-foot dock discussion of wondering where that 100-foot measurement came from. Again, Ecology's concern is that by maintaining 300 feet, which is the same distance that's currently in our code, that was going to be too permissive and allow that provision to be used by what they felt would be too many individual lots or parcels. Part of our rationale is that because that provision, which is it's now referred to as a shoreline averaging, and it is currently available to pretty much anyone, that with this proposal, it's already limited only to non-conforming lots, and it is written to be specific to protecting views. That staff's rationale was that was adequate. Those were adequate bounds to put on the provision, and that the 300-foot distance, the separation was acceptable. I think that we can probably provide rationale to them and pull some more numbers from, say, our cumulative impacts analysis that shows that when you look at the total number of shoreline parcels, which is roughly 6,200, and then you pare that down to just those which will become non-conforming to 150-foot marine buffer, that brings you down to roughly 750. So quite small, like 12%. And if you look further at which of those are vacant, it brings you down even smaller, and that our approach, or our rationale again, is that adequately limits the provision so that we are not at risk of not meeting the no net loss benchmark.
70% of the total is already developed, but I don't know if it is in that section. But if you made that assumption, then you'd only have 30% of that number then, and so.
That would be 3.6% or something, yeah.
Yeah, it becomes pretty
It's
small.
the analysis that we did back in July of '09 was that we'd be getting down to about less than 0.5% of all parcels that are non-conforming and vacant. So that seems like a pretty narrow window. And now it's not to say that those are the only situations where this provision could be used, because of course it's any non-conforming lot, but in practice that's what it comes down to. So I think Ecology seemed amenable to having our rationale presented with a little more depth, and that they were going to look more into, again, their rationale for requiring 100-foot.
Yeah, they definitely wanted us to explain or include that it's the unique conditions of Jefferson County that allow the 300 feet to be acceptable. They didn't want other counties to look at ours and say that they could have 300 feet as well, when their conditions may be much more urbanized along the shoreline.
And ours is basically based on fairness, based on what neighbors are doing, and that it wouldn't really make that much of a change for the few parcels that are there.
Sure, and our
Keep them in character with their neighborhood, and keep them, and still be protected.
yeah, I mean, and our language speaks to that. I mean, it's for the purpose of accommodating shoreline views to be adequate and comparable to adjacent residences.
Right.
You know, not necessarily equivalent, but yeah, it's that idea of keeping things comparable.
But it's gotta be a non-conforming lot.
Correct.
Right.
And they were gonna talk to the supervisor, Peter, I don't know Peter's last name.
Scalf.
Yeah, they were gonna talk to that person about it too.
Yeah, he's one of their policy leads. So we haven't heard back, you know, we haven't heard back that they have had that conversation, that further conversation, so I can't tell you more about that, but that was the indication we got from our discussion with them late last week.
Well, sounds like some conversation needs to happen before Wednesday, because that's the deadline to get the hearing out. Well, we're ending up waiting another week.
Yeah, I would say if we're looking at putting the notice in next Wednesday, then Monday would be your last opportunity to change the document we're including in Wednesday's notice, and so.
Ecology is aware of that, so.
I don't know if they were quite aware that we're that close to going to public notice, but certainly I'll be sure to inform them of that. Hopefully I'll be speaking to them either today or tomorrow, you know, as soon as possible. And
Yeah, it's important, you know, when you start setting these deadlines out there for everybody to be clear that there's a real staging of that in terms of getting notice out and doing these other things, and everybody's not always that aware. It's surprising, oh, we've got to do this next month. It's like, that means we have to do this today.
right. Yep.
Isn't the leader deadline 12 o'clock on Monday or something? Isn't it really early, Rhonda?
We can,
on Tuesdays
Yeah.
at noon, but
Oh.
if it's too lengthy,
it could be, yeah,
Okay.
tricky, so, yeah. So at this point, do we read that the board is feeling still, you still want to go with what we've got on the table, which is alternative proposal, which is keep the 300 feet and simply provide a little more depth in the rationale? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Shall we move on?